are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Hello and welcome to Law Talk on Germantown Municipal Television. My name is Vince Perryman and I'm a local attorney with the law offices of J. Vincent Perryman. Each month, Law Talk focuses on a wide range of legal issues and topics. Today's show covers estate planning. With us now is financial advisor Steve Anderson. And today we're going to do a little bit different style of it. Steve had been a guest and had suggested that somebody interview me about estate planning, so Steve got tapped for that job. So thanks for being with us, Steve, and I guess take it away.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being willing to reverse the roles. And the thought was, as I sit with clients and discuss wills, estate planning, and the like, it seems that there are some questions that are common that come up over and over and over again that I find myself trying to field. And I thought, well, it'd be a great opportunity to flip it and actually have you, the source, answering some of the questions. So that's what we'll kind of do. I've got some notes, just different things that we've thought through. So one of the things right out of the gate that I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with is when I say estate planning, wills, obviously there's more to it than just a will. What's that suite of documents that typically you're referring to when you say estate planning documents?
Yeah, so a lot of these are end of life or incapacity documents would probably be a better way of putting it. So you've got the will that is what you want happening once you have passed away. You've got trusts that some of those may be trusts that go into effect right now that are funded and they're their own entity, they file their own taxes and they distribute things out and they do what they're supposed to do. You've got other types of trusts that are revocable trusts that you and the trust are the same person, so those assets are your assets, but it's got this fiction on it, so that way when you pass away, you avoid having to deal with a probate judge.
Okay.
Then you've got powers of attorney for both financial aspects. If you become incapacitated, what do you do as far as somebody managing your funds, paying your bills while you're incapacitated? Then you have a power of attorney for health care, which that's going to be who's going to make medical decisions for me if I'm not able to make them myself. And there's another caveat in there that we might put some information in the healthcare power of attorney as to what you want done with your remains, and that's a Tennessee-specific statute because we've got geniuses in Nashville. And by that, I mean the state legislature. They always want to monkey with things. And then you've got advanced directives or a living will, which basically says, do I want to be on life support? Do I want to have nutrition given to me? Various things like that. And those are the main ones.
Okay.
You might have some sort of documents too that would address what would happen in regards to if there was a conservatorship or somebody with special needs or something like that. But that's in general what we're talking about.
Okay. And just in general, who would you say is a candidate for doing estate planning? Like, who needs your services?
Yeah, I would really say everyone does. But the real things you're looking at here is if you want to make sure that some of your assets get to certain people, then you definitely need some end-of-life stuff.
Okay.
If you don't want your mother-in-law making medical decisions for you, you need a healthcare power of attorney. Same thing with the financial stuff on that. And then something that a lot of parents don't think about in these testamentary documents, we put information in there for guardianship. So, spouses are traveling, they leave the kids with grandma and grandpa, and say for whatever reason, they take a luxurious vacation to Syria, and ISIS gets a hold of them. That's a crazy scenario there. But something could happen, boat accident, car accident, stuff like that. You pass away or you're incapacitated, and then the question is, who's going to take care of your kids? If you haven't left something that designates that works within the court system, then there can be a battle between the grandparents or the other relatives.
Yeah.
And that's not something your kids need to go through or your family members need to go through.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a hard enough time to begin with.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, it's one of those times where you don't want to have to think about anything.
Right.
So inside of the estate planning documents, there's different fiduciaries. There are different people that you assign different roles. Can you elaborate maybe on, I guess there's executor, there's often a trustee, there's guardian. What are a couple of those different roles, and what do they actually mean?
Okay, so in these documents, you have different fiduciaries. So overall, what a fiduciary is it's somebody that owes a duty to someone else. And it's known as a fiduciary duty. Most times people think of that as a monetary duty. But what we've got is an executor or an executrix is also known as a personal representative. That's the person that's in charge of a will and put in place, or an administrator, put in place of an estate to make sure that everything's followed. So they've got to file certain things with the court, they've got to file certain things with taxing authorities, they've got to take care of creditors, they've got to take care of beneficiaries. So they owe a duty to that. They may have to post a bond. So that's sort of in the estate planning or in the will and administration of an estate realm. Now, a trustee is similar. They're not reporting into a court. Personal representative has to report back into the judge. So the judge is going to hold their feet to the fire. Lots of show cause hearings sometimes with that. With a trustee, the trust document gives them what they can do and what they cannot do. And sometimes the trust document will refer back to state law. Sometimes it lays out what you can do. So if somebody wanted to challenge saying a trustee wasn't doing their fiduciary duty, they've got to go file an action themselves and then get it before a court. So there's not as much oversight there. And then on guardians, that's really where somebody's going to have a guardianship of a child, which you can kind of think of as custody or stepping into the role of parent. The other thing is you could have a conservator. And there's two varieties of that. One is of the estate, which is going to be like a trustee managing assets. The other one is of the person. So they're really just taking care of that person's needs, making sure that they're getting the care they need and things like that. Because in a conservatorship, they take away rights from the individual. So that kind of gives you the wide array of those.
A lot of different roles.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
So what would you say is the guy who just walks into the attorney that does real estate and does this and does that, but also does wills, versus someone who actually specializes in that? How would you speak to that level of expertise and the value that brings?
Yeah, I think the value is important because in every area of law there are caveats that somebody may not be aware of. A lot of people want to pick on the personal injury attorneys, call them ambulance chasers or this or that, but they know a lot of information about their area that other guys don't. So that's what you get when it's somebody that does estate planning specific. And that's a good spot for us to stop. So when we will return, we'll continue our discussion on estate planning. Please stay with us.
I think someone at my friend's school has this thing called autism. My friend's brother's son has autism. My neighbor's son has autism. My son has autism.
Autism is getting closer to home. Today, 1 in 68 children is diagnosed with autism. That's about a 30% increase in 2 years. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Right, mi cariño. So like I said, everything I learned about cooking, I learned from Grandma's empanadas. Shall we go again?
Yep.
Mix beef with the onions with the peppers with the paprika with the garlic with the oregano with the cumin. Got it?
Got it.
Throw on the olives, stir, season, stir again, pour out the flour, roll out the dough, make a circle, drop in a fistful of filling, fold over, press down, and ta-da!
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. I'm Vince Perryman, and you're watching Law Talk. Joining us on our show is financial advisor Steve Anderson. We're discussing estate planning. So, Steve, before the break, I think you were asking me what the difference between an attorney that also does estate planning and one that just does that,
Right.
and the value with that. And I think the reality of it is the one that just does that, and in Tennessee we're not allowed to call ourselves specialists unless we've got certain testing or things, but that does that every day, they're going to know the nuances that somebody that does it occasionally or is just using a form may not. So you may get a more individualized plan, which actually brings us to, I'm assuming you get the question a lot of times on, well, why can't I just go online and do my own will?
Yeah, get that a lot.
And with that, you've got the state law that's specific, but then that online will is not going to ask you, do you have property in another state? Do you want to move to another state? And be able to break down, okay, these are the different pots of property that you've got, so this you may have to deal with in Arkansas, this you may have to deal with in Mississippi, this you may have to deal with in Tennessee, and how can we put those into something to where we've only got to deal with one state.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing with it is these are fluid documents, and they're not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
And
well, and that ability to ask the question, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? Sitting with attorneys like yourself, I've seen that question asked, and then clients kind of pause. Well, I hadn't really thought through it. Now that you're asking, just kind of was rattling off an answer to fill in the blank.
Yeah, and I think that's the other important thing with it is being with somebody that's going to ask the right questions, because this is a foreign concept. To me, I would say walking into an estate planner or an attorney's office is like me. I know I can almost change the brakes on a car, but that's about where it ends. But me walking into a Formula One shop going, okay, so we're going to put together a Formula One car.
Right.
I don't know how to do that.
Right.
I don't even know the question to ask on that.
Yeah. Well, so what would you say to the person who says, okay, you got me, I don't have a will done, I don't have my power of attorney, I don't have any of my documents done, I need to get them done. But the thing that's kept me from getting it done is I don't know who my executor is going to be, or my executrix, or I don't know who I want to appoint as guardian. What would you say to that person to kind of get them over the hump to come in and see somebody?
Yeah, well, and with that, I actually had somebody sit down with me this past week that they really didn't know who they wanted.
Yeah.
They didn't have somebody, and they're thinking too, nobody's living here where they are. So we sat down and we worked through this and said, okay, well, tell me about your family. Who do you have? Okay, and we got that information down. Then it's like, tell me about who you trust.
Yeah.
Do you have somebody that you trust? And then you break it down, and now we've got our pool of people. So then we sit down and we say, okay, who has the skill set and the stomach to make healthcare decisions for you? And they say, well, I think this guy and this guy. And then it's like, okay, so now your task is go ask them if they're willing to do that. Because there's nothing worse than having a document that works, but the person doesn't want that responsibility. I think Drake and Zeke the other morning had Bill, somebody called in, and he's like, I don't want to be the guardian of these people's kids,
that's a serious task, it's a big undertaking.
And it's one of those that you get a lot of folks too, that they come in and they assume somebody will do something for them. Don't assume, go ask them.
Yeah.
But it's, and then like who can balance a checkbook is always what I use on the financial power of attorneys. And then you look at it too and you say, okay, well, if you don't have people that you think will do this and that, then maybe we need to keep it simple and we do a trust, which doesn't sound simple, but that way we don't have to deal with the court stuff.
Yeah.
And we can talk about, potentially maybe a corporate trustee or something like that if they have the comfortability level of that.
Yeah.
So
one of the questions I was going to ask, and you can touch on it, maybe you can answer or respond to the thought that, the value of a corporate trustee versus just naming a a personal trustee? Is there a value there, advantages, disadvantages? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, and generally most of the banks would say I'm biased.
Okay.
Because I don't like corporate trustees because I feel like they put their hand in somebody's pocket in a difficult spot and try to take as much money out of it as they can. So if you are going to look at corporate trustees, there's very important things you need to look at.
Okay.
And some of that is you can divide up the trust responsibilities where you have somebody that's a trustee, but you have a corporate sort of fiduciary managing the money. Okay. And there's a lot of these corporate trustees, like Cumberland Trust, they're good guys. They say, look, we ain't managing your money because there's high liability in that. We will do the trust duties only. Mm-hmm. So then you have to say, okay, I need to see your schedule of fees. How is that going to work? Now, the one piece that people forget is, okay, I know how much I'm paying my trustee, but how much am I paying their attorney? Because if there gets to be litigation, they're going to have an attorney. And a lot of people look at this schedule and they'll say, okay, I think all extraordinary fees are capped at $250 an hour. Next thing you know, you got a guy from some huge law firm at 6,000 Poplar that they, in the Triad Center saying, oh, I should be entitled to $425 an hour. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, I don't think anybody's worth that.
Yeah.
Unless somebody saved my life, maybe they'd be worth $425. But there's an argument against it. So those are questions, and you've got a lot of different trust companies out there, and I always say, okay, let's get a list together of who you want to interview.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is when we draft the trust, we've got to work with the corporate trustees if they're in there to make sure that they're willing to handle that. Because some say, I will only handle a trust if it's $1 million. Some say, we'll only handle a trust if these specific provisions are in here. And I've had some of that where I've had cancer patients that we do a trust for, and we get the company they want to sign off on it. Then they pass away. Now I've got an irrevocable trust that the potential trustees telling me I got to go amend it for them to do their job.
Yeah.
And that becomes very difficult. So those are some of the problems with corporate trustees, but a corporate trustee can be really good too because they don't die. So you're always going to outlive the corporate trustees. But when we return from our break, we'll talk more with Steve about estate planning. Please stay with us.
Pretty much a good day for me would be people leaving their hands off of me. I'm always called names. Everywhere that I go, there's always someone calling me names, calling me gay. I've been choked, thrown up against a wall, punched. Nobody's ever tried to help me.
Really? Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. With us now is Steve Anderson, and we're talking about estate planning. Steve, I don't remember where we were before the break. I think I was railing on fiduciaries or corporate fiduciaries.
Well, I kind of took us off a little bit in the weeds, possibly, but just if we step back, just broader thought. So someone's got legal documents done, or they've done them in the past. How often would you recommend someone review, just as a general rule, review their legal documents? Are there life events that would necessitate the need to do that?
There are life events, and I always suggest to everybody, since nobody likes taxes, nobody wants to think about their death, just do it when you do your taxes.
Okay.
So once a year, take a look at it. And when you're looking at the document, what you're saying to yourself is do these documents still work for my needs? So a good example is maybe your mother is your power of attorney, and now your mother has dementia or something like that. So I need to change this. So if there's a health event that happens to one of your fiduciaries or your attorneys in fact in these documents, or you get more assets in and you may need to retitle something or look at taxability issues, which, you know, you'd be very lucky on that if it's over $5 million. Those types of things, if you have more kids, if you get divorced, spouse passes away, or you get married, those are times where you need to come in and look at it.
Okay.
You know, and a tune-up can be pretty simple on that, because you read through it, get your list of questions together, sit down with an estate planner, you know, and they can tell you whether or not you need to do something with that or you don't.
Yeah,
So.
that's great. Are there some common pitfalls, common mistakes, myths that people, when they start to engage with you in the planning process, that they just drag in with them into your office? They don't even realize they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, a lot of times it's whether or not an asset would pass under a will.
Okay.
You know, and if it has a beneficiary, it's not going to. Things like that. Also, real property, how do you handle that? Tennessee's got some weird caveats in it. Whether or not, some people, they take the position, well, I'm leaving it all to my kids, and I don't want to be any more specific than that. You know, which is fine. There are some things and some where people think that the cost of probate is really expensive. It may not be in your situation.
Yeah.
You just have to sit down and look at all of
Yeah.
it. Same thing with the cost of a trust. Some people think that that's really expensive, but it's not as expensive as you think.
Yeah. So with kind of along that line with the cost of a trust, are there, you know, we don't have to get super in-depth on this, but just in general, you know, that idea of trust, the word trust, you know, people hear that. Are there differences between an estate plan that functions from a trust-centered standpoint versus one that's will-centered? Can you speak to maybe what the difference is there?
The real difference with it is who's overseeing it. If it's will-based, there's going to be a judge in a robe that doesn't know anything about you except what's in the pleading. That's going to be who oversees it. With a trust, it's going to be the trustee.
Okay.
Unless somebody gets ticked off and takes it into court, then you got the guy in the robe or the woman in the robe.
Yeah.
So, but that's your main difference with them.
Are there, so I'm a financial advisor, you're an attorney. I've got a client that I want to introduce to you, and I'm thinking to myself, how do I add value other than forcing them to come see you and get these documents done? How can an attorney or a CPA or some of the other advisors that are in a client's world that are kind of on their team, how can they add value to the estate planning process?
Well, and it's an interesting process because everybody's got a little bit different of a skill set. You know, because when it comes to retirement accounts, you guys tend to know a little bit more than I do. So I want your input on those issues. Also, there may be one of the advisors that client just trusts more and has spent more time with, so they know more about their estate. So they need to be in on the process so we know what the assets are and things like that. And then the tax advisors, if you've got tax planning in that estate, they're going to know the ramifications of that. And sometimes you've got the issue where it may be an asset in an estate that is in a state that I'm not licensed in, so we need somebody with information with that. Now, the one thing that you got to be careful with on this is attorney-client privilege isn't going to apply if you guys are all in the same room. Now, with that though, that is getting the input, but the final document, that's really probably what they want to be privileged. Because sometimes you got the kid that you don't want them to know what you've got in there. So you've got to have a heads-up attorney that's like, okay, this is an attorney-client privilege document, so just you, client, and I have a copy of that. And make them aware too that if they do share it with somebody else, then that privilege goes away. You know, and that's something that doesn't come up that often, but it's important to think about those things.
Sure. Just a simple question. You know, you got a will. Where do you recommend somebody keep it?
Well,
what do you do with it once you got it done?
Well, there's two things you want to do with it. You want to make a copy of it.
Okay.
And keep a copy in a separate place from where you keep the original.
Okay.
So that way, if they're both in the same house and they burn down, we're not going to have a copy. You may want to make a digital copy of it,
Okay.
because that may be a little bit easier to store. In today's world, it's a little bit different, because used to, on a fireproof safe, your typed up copy of that will would still be good after the fire. Well, now, depending on what ink it was printed with, the ink may evaporate. So we can, though, probate a copy of the will or a copy of the document. You got to jump through some more hoops to do that. But you generally a safety deposit box or a safe. And I always suggest, if you've got your fiduciary and you trust whoever that executor is, give them a copy of your will. And also, if you revoke your will, whoever you gave a copy to, let them know you revoked it.
So they're not standing there with a document that doesn't apply.
Yeah, and you deal with some of these things. I call them little Miss Murdy's from The Lady and the Rainmaker, that they're always wanting to change their will, and it's cut, because somebody ticked them off this week.
Yeah.
And there may come a day where I'm a little old Miss Murdy myself. But, if you're changing your mind a lot, things like that on this, you want to make sure you get those original and copies and you destroy them when you've got a will that's replacing them.
Okay.
So, and we got 1 minute left. So what more questions do you have?
Yeah. So when you think about the estate planning process, just high level real quickly, what does the process look like? Is it 6 meetings, 2 meetings, an hour? Just for a normal, husband, wife, young child?
I'd say a lot of times on something that's not that complex, you're looking at no more than 3 meetings.
Okay.
And you're probably looking at 2 if you come in kind of well educated with what you want done.
Okay.
Because the trick with it is there's going to be some time drafting it, then you've got to review it, and then get it executed properly.
Great.
So, but I mean, it's a pretty simple process once you start thinking about it. Just
Sure.
People don't want to think about death.
Yeah.
So, our time is up for this edition of Law Talk. I'd like to thank our guest for taking time out of his busy schedule and being with us and sharing his thoughts and insights. If you would like more information about Law Talk or any other program on Germantown Municipal Television, please refer to our website at www.gmtvonline.org. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to join us next month for more discussion on legal topics. Until then, I'm Vince Perryman, and thank you for watching.